Now vCenter server is installed. We can see right down here that it completed successfully. If I click on the plus next to the IP address that represents our ESXi host, I can see vCenter demo, which is what I named it. Now, if I go over here to the console tab, I should be able to see the console output of this device. And there it is. Now you can see once again that it was not able to grab a IP address from a DHCP server, so we will have to set that manually. Right up here in the red, it shows us how to set a manual IP address on this device. So I typically take a screenshot of this using my little snip tool with Windows 7 it comes with, because I'm not going to remember that little script there. Now I've selected the console. If I don't have the console selected, then of course my keystrokes aren't going to do anything. But if I click on the console, now my keystrokes will administer that device. I hit enter to log in. Username is root, and the default password is VMware, all in lowercase. There we go. So our script is /opt/VMware share vami _config_net. And there we go with our numerical menu system. Option 6 is to add an IP address for Ethernet 0. Configure an IPv6 address? Nope. Configure an IPv4 address? Yes. You will notice an N in brackets in these options. That means that no is default for these options. So if I simply hit enter, then the default, which is listed in brackets, will be selected. Use a DHCP for server instead of static. No, I want to use a static IP address. Enter the IP address, 10.10.10.100, enter. Netmask, same as our ESXi server, /24. Yes, it's correct, and that is in brackets, so I simply hit enter. Oops, need to select it again. There we go. Now, it didn't give me an option to select a default gateway, but the menu does. So I will hit option 2. Choose the interface to associate with default gateway, and 0 is selected by default, and 0 is the number of my Ethernet 0 network adapter. So that's fine. The gateway is going to be 10.10.10.1, which again is my host virtual adapter. And I hit enter. I don't care about IPv6 right now. It resets, and we're done. So option number 1 is to exit this program. And I type in exit, and I am back to the regular console, and it gives me instructions on how to administer this device. And we're just going to follow the instructions. HTTPS 10.10.10.100:5480. Proceed anyway. Presented with a login, root, and VMware again. Accept the license agreement next. And we can see it's running through a script as I have accepted the license agreement. Now, configure with default settings is perfectly fine, and start. Now, it runs through a whole series of scripts and processes to get this vCenter server up and running, and this actually takes several minutes. So I'm going to pause the recording until this is complete. We are back, and as you can see here, the vCenter server setup is complete. So I will click on close. It's going to show us that everything is running, everything's happy. And now what we're going to do is launch another instance of the vSphere client, but this time we are going to log in to the vCenter server. So this time I'm going to log into 10.10.10.100 username root, and the password VMware. Ignore. And here we are. Once again, your evaluation license will expire within 60 days. So, we cannot add the ESXi host to vCenter unless we license vCenter first. So let me show you how that's done. I'm going to click on Administration and then vCenter Server Settings. And this is where we can assign a new license key. So I'm going to select that radio button and hit Enter key. And this is where I will enter my key and continue on. So now I have entered my key and I can create a data center. As you can see, this icon represents our vCenter server. So I am going to rename that to vCenter. Now on the Getting Started tab, the very first task that it wants us to take care of is to create a data center. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to name it Data Center. Now you'll notice that I didn't use any spaces in the name of this data center. And the reason why is because we are going to call that data center name in our Nexus 1000v configuration. And I'm not really sure how it would handle spaces in the name. I might be able to use quotes, I'm not really sure. But just to make things easy, I'm going to use no spaces in that name. All right, the next step is to add a host. So I select Add a Host, and I type in the IP address of the host with the username and password that I configured for that host. This is the ESXi server. And click Next. And it can see our host. We click Next again. It already has a license installed, so I click Next, 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 Finish. And you can see over here that it is adding the ESXi host. This over here is our vSphere client for ESXi, and on the right we have our vCenter server, and if I can grab that and pull it up a little bit, we can see the progress of adding the ESXi host to vCenter. All right, and there it is. Now we've got a little bit of circular logic going on here. We've got vCenter, we've got a data center within vCenter, which is like an organizational unit. We have added the host to vCenter, and a virtual machine running on that host is vCenter. So it is a little bit circular, but it works, I promise. In our next segment, we are going to actually deploy the Nexus 1000v.